Welcome back to Doctor Who, the Cancelled Chronicles, and today we will be talking about the next two seasons of the 12th Doctor era. Before we get into it though, I'd like to say I am sick right now, so if I sound kind of gross and nasally, I apologize for that, but I want to get this out on time, so I'm recording it now. Apologies for the not great narration. But let us get into the next two seasons of the 12th Doctor era. Not a lot would change this season, as the theme music and the companions would stay the same. However, John Dorney wanted to bring in Paul Mars as a writer because he was fascinated with the character of Iris Wildthyme and wanted to bring in the character to Doctor Who. Mars agreed as long as he could write her introductory story, and Dorney agreed. She would be a difficult character to write for, but they managed to make it work for the most part in regards to bringing a literary character onto a visual medium. Stephen Moffat suggested making the character of Lilith Rivers and her one and the same, as the trajectory of what he wanted to do with that character was similar to what they wanted for Iris. So all three collaborated on the idea, and Mars and Dorney would write the script for the first episode. Outside of that, nothing of note would really change. The first story is Iris, written by Paul Mars and John Dorney. The Doctor stumbles upon a woman he met before named Iris Wildthyme. She looks very similar to a woman named Lilith Rivers when she and him fought the Vashta Nerada. Is she a possible Time Lord, or is something very off with this character? So this would be the reintroduction of the character of Lilith Rivers, last seen in Silence in the Library, played by Karen Westwood. She would retroactively be made Iris Wildthyme. The Doctor would come across her in one of his adventures. There is very little known about her, but it is stated how she is possibly on her fifth incarnation, or maybe not. Is she a Time Lord? Maybe, maybe not. Throughout their interactions with her, she continues to toy with the Doctor, and the Doctor states how she is very unlike how she was when he previously met her. Well, Iris states she doesn't remember that, and that maybe they met out of order. She also claims to be the Doctor's wife. Maybe, maybe not. The adventure would be a very run-of-the-mill plot in present-day London involving Unit, which would feature the final appearance of Nicholas Courtney as Lethbridge Stewart, as he passed away 2 months before the premiere, as well as the second major appearance of Kate Lethbridge Stewart as the head of Unit, still played by Redgrave. It would be about the two Lethbridge Stewarts and the Doctor trying to figure out who Iris is, but getting nowhere. Sally and Larry get caught in their own subplot, which involves them looking back on their relationship and where they stand. The menace in this episode is simply an alien who simply wants to blow up London for his own nefarious purposes. It remains simple because the main mystery would be Iris Wildthyme. By the end of the episode, they get nowhere, and she eventually leaves in her own ship, which might be a TARDIS. The Doctor has a heartfelt goodbye to Lethbridge Stewart and leaves with his companions. There would obviously be a in loving memory of Nicholas Courtney by the end of the episode, or in front of the episode, depending on which is better. The second story is Death Dreams, written by Simon Nye. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry wake up to find themselves in a supposed dream. Apparently, a man has sent them here to give them an uneasy choice as they view a future like theirs, but things seem off. Sally has her parents and never met the Doctor. Larry is marrying the love of his life, and most importantly, the Doctor is dead. The Doctor decides to investigate this dream. So this would be heavily inspired by Amy's Choice, but instead of going back and forth between two dreams, it's just one and a bit more cut and dry. The Dream Lord still makes an appearance, still played by Toby Jones, so while not directly said as a part of her lore, Sally's parents have been long dead ever since she was a kid, so seeing that is a great surprise. It would mainly follow Sally and Larry and how they figure all this out with their lives, but also the Doctor investigating his own death. Through the Doctor's investigation, it is eventually revealed that the Dream Lord is keeping them there indefinitely, and they have to find cracks in reality to finally break through. They eventually do so and defeat the Dream Lord, which was revealed to be a manifestation of the darker parts of the Doctor's personality due to psychic pollen, much like in the actual episode. But it is also mentioned that this isn't the first time the Doctor has fought a darker manifestation of themselves, referencing the Valyard. They eventually continue on their adventure. The third story is Tragedy of the Cyberman, written by Mike Maddox. The Doctor comes across a broken Cyberman on the line between human and monster. The Doctor ultimately decides to help him and must figure out if he's more machine than man. This takes the concept of humanity versus machine that the Cybermen are and really puts it at the forefront. It's pretty much the idea of the Doctor and company finding the Cyberman who is pretty much half converted. Imagine something similar in look to the lone Cyberman. He would be on a vessel where he appears to be the only life form on board. Throughout the episode, the Doctor investigates further, and it turns out that the Cyberman was sent here to convert the fleet, as the vessel was shipping people from one place to another. But it is soon realized that the Cyberman was not broken at all, but he was a fully converted Cyberman who found the humanity within himself to stop himself from killing the people on board. But the Cyberman fleet would be here any minute after they realized he failed. The Cyberman tries to help the Doctor, only to be fixed and fully converted. The Doctor defeats the Cyberman and sets the proper course for the ship to get it to its current destination. While leaving, a dying Cyberman says thank you to the Doctor before he fully dies. It is unknown if this was the same Cyberman or a different one who felt humanity. They leave knowing that the Cyberman died a hero. The fourth story is The House of Nothing, written by Neil Gaiman. When he follows a Time Lord distress signal, the Doctor puts Sally, Larry, and his beloved TARDIS in grave danger. This would be an adaptation of The Doctor's Wife, Little Changes. The fifth story is The Sad Fate of the Last Mermissian, written by Stephen Thompson. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry enter a planet where a new creature named the Mermissian is the last of his kind. Unfortunately, in order to ascend with his beings, he must find himself a Mermissian to fall in love with, but the problem is, there isn't any. So what is a Mermissian supposed to do all by his lonesome? The episode would open with an aquatic being traversing the bottom of an ocean. By himself, he looks at some sort of technological watch that just says 1. It keeps blinking, which then leads us into the opening credits. It then cuts to the Doctor and company landing on the planet. They start traversing the ocean as the entire planet is like this, and they see major cities filled with similar aquatic beings, like we saw in the opening, but quite different. They explore the city until they find out sort of an urban legend, the being we saw in the opening, the last Mermissian. He has traversed the entire ocean for a love partner for years and has been unable to find one. It turns out that once the race shows of a genetic mutation that can be copied, they exploit it and evolve, and the race before them must die out. But their ritual is that they try to find a lover to spend the rest of their existence with and move on to the next life with them. Due to a death many years ago, the number of beings was uneven, so technically his partner died when they were an infant. This is found out very slowly throughout the episode when it switches between the Doctor's POV and the Mermissian's POV. The Doctor then decides to find him. They traverse the ocean to look for him, and it takes a very long time even with the TARDIS, but they do so. They explain that they know who he is and they want to help him, but after taking his journey a long time ago, he decides to resign to his fate and die. But the Doctor isn't having it. They try to give him a great final day, but he is still depressed. Eventually, they take him back to the city, where the evolved race take pity on him and decide to ultimately let him live among them, breaking a long-standing tradition. So while the last Mermissian is technically alone, he will truly never be alone for the rest of his days. The Doctor is happy with this development, and he leaves with his companions. The sixth story is Vincent and the Doctor, written by Richard Curtis. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry travel back in time to meet Vincent van Gogh and face an invisible monster that only the painter can see. The Doctor knows that Van Gogh will produce several of his masterpieces in these months before his death and doesn't want to upset him. He gives him a gift that is a true eye-opener. This would be an adaptation of the episode of the same name. The only major change is that now Larry is there with them and Sally isn't a redhead, so Vincent doesn't take a liking to her, so there is no romantic subplot. The seventh story is The Erosion of Time, written by Jacqueline Rayner. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry enter a time period that is not in the history books. In between 4598 BC and 4012 BC, they must discover if an event in history was so horrible that it was deemed too horrible for future peoples, or if it was a cover-up for something else. This would be a two-parter involving the Doctor trying to find this place in history that was seemingly erased. Nothing is known about it in any database they can find, so the Doctor goes to Gallifrey and asks around to see if he can find anything. The first half of the first episode would be him researching on Gallifrey about this time in history, and it was deemed relatively normal history for the time. Very typical evolution for humans. But everywhere else, even expansive databases like the Great Intelligence and the Daleks don't have this place in their history banks, so the rest of the episode would be the Doctor going to this place in history, but can't. Somehow the TARDIS isn't able to touch it. He forces his way through it, and they crash into Earth, somewhere on Earth. It is unknown where. Eventually they reach an alien who is surprised to see them and say it should be impossible, which leads to the next episode. The next episode would be about the alien named Treklon. He is hiding in this mainly unwritten part of history and shielded time and memory from it so he can work on what he needs to work on. The episode would mainly be researching what he is doing. It is eventually found out that he is working on a doomsday device to kill his homeworld as revenge for banishing him, and will leave this part of history forgotten permanently so as not to interfere with his plans. They eventually stop him by stopping the doomsday device at the last second, but also taking down the shield so this part of history can be remembered for future generations. operations once more. The Doctor and company then leave for their next adventure. The 8th story is 4006, written by Robert Shearman. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry decide to take a break and start to relax in a standard hotel. But the weird thing is, this is no ordinary hotel, as the exact room they stay the night seems to be causing it to lead to 3 different timelines that are only an hour ahead of the previous. So this would be a very mind-bending episode that is very Robert Shearman in the best ways possible, much like Scherzo or Holy Terror. Essentially, the first act or so would be the Doctor figuring out what the timeline is in regards to the rooms, as well as them finding out they are locked in with a way to try and get out being a puzzle. One is 1 hour ahead, one is 2 hours ahead, and one is 3 hours ahead. They peek into the 3-hour one first and find that Larry is dead and the Doctor is mortally wounded. It seems that Sally is the cause of this. They then discuss the repercussions and try to figure this out by going into the other 2 doors. The second door has Larry and Sally arguing and the Doctor trying to break up the argument. The first door has them discussing things. The Doctor must investigate if this timeline is set in stone or if they are able to change based on anything. It is eventually found out that these lead to 3 alternate realities based on 3 decisions they made earlier on that would have blossomed into these realities. Early on in the episode, Sally gets mad at Larry for not packing something important, but in this reality, he did, just in his own suitcase so he didn't forget. Him actually forgetting led to the 2-hour door of her and Larry arguing. Then the 3 of them discussing the 3 doors would lead to the first door if they were to continue doing that. Then they try to figure out the 3rd door. What would cause Sally to kill Larry? It turns out when they arrived, an alien would have tried to steal Larry's identity and shapeshift into him. This would have caused Sally to go crazy and kill the shapeshifter, and not believing the Doctor wounds him as well. So each of them go through each door. Sally goes in the first, Larry goes in the second, and the Doctor goes in the third. Sally tells them what's going on, so they stop discussing and leave. The second door, Sari gives some of the important thing to this version of Sally, and they make up and leave. The Doctor then goes and finds the real Larry, saves himself, and the 3 of them eventually leave. They come back to the main room, the door unlocks, and they leave, going back to the TARDIS, not wanting any more of this terrible vacation. But it is not revealed that if the rest of the hotel is like this, or if it was just a weird thing that happened to the room, or who was behind this. The 9th story is The Misconceptions of Paradise, written by Chris Chibnall. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry enter what seems to be the Garden of Eden, only to discover Eden isn't actually a peaceful garden, and they have not landed in the beginning of Earth. They actually land on a ship that has evacuated Earth for 1500 years after its demise. Thus, there are only a few survivors on the ship, as the Doctor must investigate something that is wiping out the remaining humans. This would be very similar to the film Pandorum, where genetically evolved cannibals have been eating the non-evolved humans, and the Doctor decides to help the survivors stop the evolved cannibals. It turns out some humans escaped from their pods and couldn't get back into them, so they had to live out of their pods, breeding amongst themselves and eating the survivors for sustenance after they ran out of food. It is a very simple horror-esque story that is very run-of-the-mill. The Doctor tries to help both sides, but the leader of the survivors decides to kill the cannibals anyway, which leaves the Doctor pissed, and he leaves with his companions back on the TARDIS. The 10th story is The Horror of Glam Rock, written by Paul Mars. The Doctor, Sally, and Larry go glam when the TARDIS makes an unexpected landing in 1974. Slade, The Sweet, and Susie Quattro are top of the pops, and brother and sister duo The Tomorrow Twins will be joining them, if the star-making Svengali Arnold Corns has his way. But will their dreams turn to dust at a service station somewhere on the M62, besieged by a pack of alien monsters? This would adapt the story of the same name Little Changes, with the relative now being a relative of Sally. The Christmas special is The Silent Stars Go By, written by Dan Abnett. The Winter Festival is approaching for the hardy colony of Morphins, but no one is in the mood to celebrate. They're trying to build a life on a cold new world, but each year gets harder and harder. It's almost as if some dark force is working against them. Then 3 mysterious travelers arrive out of the midwinter night, one of them claiming to be a doctor. Are they bringing the gift of salvation or doom, and what else might be lurking out there about to wake up? This would be an adaptation of the book of the same name, Little Changes. So, that would be season 48. It was considered an overall mixed season, with some episodes like The House of Nothing and Vincent and the Doctor being unanimously praised, while others like Death Dreams and The Misconceptions of Paradise were considered very weak. But overall, a decent sophomore season, as many people thought Ayoade fit into the role of the Doctor more, in addition to seeing Sally and Larry fit into their roles better. Now we move into season 49 of Doctor Who, and after 3 seasons, it was ultimately decided that Ferdinando and in power, wanted to leave at the end of the season. It was decided that another companion would be joining them, a much younger early teen, to help them realize they want a life on Earth to raise a family instead of being with the Doctor. They cast Ella Hunt in the role, and this would be an ongoing storyline throughout the season before they finally exit. Outside of that, little else would change. The first story is Eternal Damnation, written by Nicholas Briggs. The Doctor finds himself in the Matrix, forgotten by the universe with the exception of the Time Lords. He sits in an eternal pain of loneliness, a fate worse than death, but he sees a glitch from time to time. He thinks it's nothing, but it seems as though someone out there can remember him. The Doctor must find the strength in himself to be remembered again. So yeah, it's unknown for most of the episode, but the Doctor wakes up in the Matrix with the inability to get out because, well, it's assumed he's dead. He's in a state of eternal blackness and is all but a memory. Well, not even that. He tries to find answers, but the Matrix isn't really functioning properly. He tries to call to the Time Lords for help, but they can only tell him he's dead and he was forgotten somehow, but is only remembered to them. Throughout the episode, there is a glitch, a young girl trying to find the Doctor. She needs help. He helped her a long time ago, but now she needs his help again, but no one knows he exists. Eventually, she reaches him, which causes him to escape the Matrix. It turns out the Daleks managed to find a way to wipe the memory of everyone in the universe of the Doctor, except this one girl who he saved during a previous adventure. The Doctor manages to get out of the Matrix, stop the Daleks, wipe their memory to ever create this technology again, and destroys the device. He thanks the girl named Heather Noble for remembering him, and he meets up with Sally and Larry, who are gobsmacked that they somehow forgot him. The Doctor then invites Heather to be a companion, and she says yes. Then the four of them set out for another adventure. The second story is the Augmentation Program, written by Stephen Cole. The Doctor and company plan to land in the sweeping hills of Austria, but when they get out of the TARDIS, they are in a cold and abandoned research station. The only thing the Doctor can find is something called the Augmentation Program. What they soon realize is they're not alone, and what is hunting them wants Time Lord brains. This would essentially be a zombie episode. The Augmentation Program was designed to have soldiers become super soldiers through any sort of means, whether that is a formula, like a serum, or adding body parts or machinery to them to make them better soldiers. Well, what a shock. These experiments escaped and killed the scientists. This is found out through most of the episode through found footage and diary entries. The Doctor eventually realized that they only want him and locks his companions away in the TARDIS so they won't get hurt because of him. They try to help the Doctor by trying to get out. He finds that one of the scientists looks suspiciously familiar. The Ronnie, still played by Indira Varma, was the head scientist. She would never be present in the episode, but she would show up in the footage they go through. Hence why they want Time Lord brains, because that's what the soldiers recognized after being experimented on and augmented for so long. So once the Doctor figures this out, he locks himself in a room and tries to save the soldiers, drum up a cure, anything, but it doesn't work. That's when the companions get out of the TARDIS and destroy all augmented soldiers and save the Doctor. They soon leave in the TARDIS with the Doctor being somewhat upset, but realizes he couldn't do anything. The third story is The Doctor's Assassin, written by John Dorney. While on an alien planet, the Doctor realizes that someone has put a hit out on him, and no matter what he does, he cannot get away. Does he give himself up to protect the people he cares about, or does he continue to do what he does best, keep running? This would be a sort of epic bounty hunting story. The assassin would never be seen until the very end of the last episode. The first episode would essentially be a planet-hopping adventure, the Doctor trying to find out who the assassin is and trying to protect his companions, who are also not safe. Should he turn himself in is also a major idea that comes up during the first episode. So essentially, the end of the first episode is the Doctor realizing what the threat is and must go to one more planet to stop this from happening. The next episode begins with the Doctor landing on the planet, and with the events of the last story, his companions don't want to leave him. It's on this gas-filled planet do we realize that the bounty hunter is invisible, hence why he is so good at his job. So by the end of it, the Doctor defeats him. It's revealed that somebody out there put a bounty on his head, but we never figure out who it is. The hunter then gets imprisoned, and the TARDIS crew go on their merry way. Sally and Larry also have a subplot that feeds into their overall arc this season. The fourth story is The Relativity of Einstein, written by Mark Gatiss. The Doctor, Heather, Sally, and Larry visit 1905, where Albert Einstein made his latest discovery, only for Albert to discover there's a bigger world out there. This would essentially be a pure historical in regards to the Doctor, Sally, and Larry trying to meet Einstein, but not mess with history so that he can publish his theory of special relativity that year. It would be a smaller and tighter knit episode with the Doctor having a conversation with Einstein about the theory. Sally and Larry have their own smaller adventure in 1905 Switzerland involving a mistaken identity that they must resolve. Eventually everything is wrapped up and the company leaving the TARDIS, where Albert witnesses it and is astonished by it. The fifth story is The Potent Pill of Prasmoxia, written by Toby Whithouse. The people of Prasmoxia are fat. The Doctor has tried time and time again to get the planet to lose weight, knowing of an invasion in their future. But now with a special diet pill on the market, that might just come true. Except the invasion he knows is coming is happening now, and the pills are designed to make the planet pile on weight and be too fat to move for an easier invasion. Can the Doctor and company stop the Glasmaxians, or is Prasmoxia doomed forevermore? This would somewhat be like Partners in Crime, but have a dark satirical edge to the whole thing. I mean, the episode summary explained it pretty well. The Doctor has come to Prasmoxia many times, and they are fatter than they should be, as in an unnatural way rather than being naturally big. He has tried many times to get them to lose weight because he knows of an impending invasion that is not a fixed point in time. So he tries one more time to get them to lose weight, and it turns out they have listened to him and have designed this new diet pill. But the Doctor realizes this will have them pack on weight instead of lose weight. Turns out the head scientist was an undercover Glasmaxian, so the invasion will be easier. The rest of the episode will be the Doctor trying to stop them from taking it, but they do so anyway. However, it turns out that the invasion doesn't work because they have become so fat, they remain unharmed from the weapons that are destroying the planet from space, as well as weapons on the ground. With this, the Glasmaxians are forced to retreat, with the day being saved by their weight. The Doctor admits he was wrong and says he will not come back to the world to try and fix something that should not be fixed. It would be a bit more of a tongue-in-cheek episode with a bit of dark comedy / satirical twist to it, as I mentioned. The episode would have definitely gotten flack for the time, even with the more accepting ending, with the Doctor saying he was wrong to judge the Prasmoxians and that he should have accepted them for who they are. The sixth story is Sycorax Eternal, written by Paul Mars. The Sycorax have fully returned, yet only this time they have come prepared, and this time they got something planned better than using blood control. The biggest weapon they will use is none other than the Doctor himself. So this would be another Sycorax episode now, them invading some other planet, only because the Doctor is on it. They try to get some of his DNA as they think Time Lord DNA will help them gain control of not only people, but of time itself. Obviously, this doesn't work out, and the Doctor defeats them once again. The episode would end with Sally and Larry saying to the Doctor that they need a break. The seventh story is Mummy on the Orient Express, written by Jamie Matheson. The Doctor is on the most beautiful train in history, speeding among the stars of the future, but a deadly creature is stalking the passengers, and it can only be seen by the people it is hunting. This would be an adaptation of the episode of the same name, with Heather being the only companion here, taking the Clara role, while Sally and Larry take a break for this episode, as mentioned previously. The eighth story is Bad Signal, written by Charlie Brooker. The Doctor and his companions happen upon various strange TV broadcastings that are mind-controlling people. They are communicating with them to wipe out all of Earth and make it under the stranger's possession. Who is under this control, and more importantly, why do these figures want Earth? So this would be a very experimental episode, which would make sense since Charlie Brooker is writing it. I was inspired by an idea from Jay and Stu write Doctor Who, where most of the episode would take place from the signal itself rather than the Doctor's POV. So for most of the episode, we would see people getting entranced by the broadcast from their TV sets. It wouldn't be obvious at first, but as more and more people get hypnotized, the messages become clearer and clearer. Aliens have hijacked the signals and have been doing this for years, but now the signal is shown to have more prominence due to the internet and social media. Videos on various social networks have also been hypnotizing people. Eventually, around halfway through the episode, the Doctor realizes something is wrong and tries to stop it. The people being hypnotized start to build things in their living rooms, a weapon that would destroy any and all technology, kind of like what happens in the beginning of the show Revolution. So the aliens can invade Earth more easily. In the last few minutes of the episode, we are shown the aliens' point of view, and the Doctor puts a stop to them on the moon, as that's where they were hiding. He stops the signal, but right before the episode ends, one channel is shown to have lived and still has that signal. The ninth story is The Honeymoon, written by Gareth Roberts. Larry finally proposes to Sally. With this, they want to leave the TARDIS to get married and live a normal life. The Doctor is sad to see them go, but wants them to stay around for one final adventure. This time, they will be temporarily skipping the wedding part for the more fun part, the honeymoon. The Doctor ultimately takes them to a moon literally made out of honey. When they arrive, they of course find giant bees. Hijinks ensue. This would be a very simple and silly episode. They get separated from the TARDIS and get caught up in insect politics with the queen bee and a revolution. The giant bees want to kill them, and it's a mess from beginning to end. Eventually, the Doctor takes them out to a nice restaurant on Earth with the four of them. They have a nice, tearful goodbye, saying that it might be goodbye, but it's not the end. The Doctor leaves with Heather Heather for their next adventure. The 10th story is The Festival of Death, written by Jonathan Morris. The Beautiful Death is the ultimate theme park ride, a sightseeing tour of the afterlife. But something has gone wrong, and when the Doctor arrives in the aftermath of the disaster, he is congratulated for saving the population from destruction, something he hasn't actually done yet. He has no choice but to travel back in time and discover how he became a hero, and then he finds out he did it by sacrificing his life. This would adapt the novel of the same name. Little changes. The Christmas special, The Greatest Gift, is written by Stephen Moffat. The Doctor enters London 2045 as it is Christmas Eve. However, a man named Benjamin Stewart has been unhappy with his life after losing everything in a recent war. He decides to jump off a bridge, but right as he jumps, the TARDIS catches him as the Doctor decides to take Benjamin on a little trip to view the outcome if he died. Much like A Christmas Carol, this would be another episode that takes inspiration from a classic story. While A Christmas Carol is a much older story, this would be a much more contemporary story, basing it off of It's a Wonderful Life, but with a Doctor Who spin on it. The episode starts off with Ben Stewart going throughout his day like normal, but he is clearly depressed. It is shown to us that his wife left him, he lost his house in a fire, and his car was stolen, so he feels like he has not much left to live for. So he decides to jump off a bridge, but the Doctor has been watching him, and the TARDIS is positioned to catch him. He saves his life and is about to return him when Ben starts to complain that he doesn't want to do this anymore. So the Doctor decides to show him his life if he did end his life that night. He shows the world he left is now just a little bit worse. A woman he would see every day at the store would be saddened that he is not there, and with him not being there, she eventually loses her job because she can no longer focus on work. The homeless shelter he lives in would be in disarray, as he was the one who kept it functioning, as despite living there, he would also volunteer his time and eventually it would close down. His ex-wife would also be saddened by his loss, to the surprise of Ben, as she was forced to leave because of a threat to her life by her abusive father who never liked him. She would be seen crying at the wheel of her car and die in a car crash, as well as people who he helped in small ways, giving money to a homeless man, stopping a mugging, doing all the little things that would help people throughout his days would be felt in their lives that he thinks would have meant nothing. By the end, the Doctor shows a mural of Ben made many years after his supposed death. He begs the Doctor to let him live again before the timeline becomes permanent. He does so and takes him back to the bridge on that very night with a new lust for life. The Doctor then states the famous line to him before he leaves: "No man is a failure who has friends." He and Heather depart for another adventure while Ben looks on in amazement at the TARDIS leaving. This would be considered a bit of a better season, as many liked the new companion of Heather and felt that Sally and Larry had a good exit. It would, however, be announced that Richard Ayoade would be leaving his role as the Doctor at the end of the 50th anniversary season, as he felt like he had a good run, and it would be very applicable, ending at the 50th season of the show. So, that is it for Doctor Who this time around. Next time we are going to be doing Series 3 and 4 of The Lady. See you then.